All right, ladies and gentlemen, viewers out there, we are talking to Judge Derwin Webb. He is a dad, and he is the first African American family court judge in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So, welcome, Judge
Thank you
Derwin.
very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No problem, no problem. Just so my viewers can feel comfortable, let them know a little bit about what you're doing, what's going on with you right now.
Okay, as you stated, I am a Jefferson County Family Court judge here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. They call me the unicorn. I am the first African American male family court judge in the history of Kentucky. So it has some good things, and also comes with a lot of weight to it as well. My schedule every day is unlike any other judge. I go in. I have different dockets like paternity dockets. I have domestic violence dockets. I have dockets that include issues regarding dependency, neglect, and abuse cases for kids. So, I do this random divorce, child custody cases, and things of that nature. But being a male of color also comes with a lot more scrutiny as well.
Right.
I find myself being the person that gets appealed a little bit more than my white colleagues.
Okay.
I find myself having to let people know who I am a lot of times, rather than them just noticing a black robe and having me treated a certain way. So it's a good job. I like to tell people all the time, if I was independently wealthy, I would do this job for free. I love what I do every day because I have a chance to change someone's life every day I get up. But I will tell you this, it comes with a burden as well.
Wow, that's great. Now, you already touched on a few things that I know can be problematic. As this African American judge, do you find yourself getting more of the cases that deal with African American families, or is it sort of an even keel thing in your area?
Well, being in Louisville, especially in Jefferson County, is set up a little bit differently. All the judges have their cases based upon last name. So my last name for the cases I hear start with H-I and end with I think K-I, like King. Okay. So it's technically evenly distributed, but I get every Jackson, Jones, Johnson, anything and most of those cases a lot of times tend to look like us.
Right.
They say that's evenly distributed, and I understand that in theory, but I think that I have, as far as cases are concerned, probably the largest number simply because of the alphabet.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I lived in the South before. I lived in Nashville, which is not too far from Kentucky, and I noticed that it seemed the South still seems to have a different type of racism than the Northeast. And I'm from New York, so coming to the South was a shocker to me. Things just seem to be laid out, just blatant. I don't know which one. People keep saying, well, which one do you prefer? I don't know. I don't prefer it at all. But, just sometimes stuff being out in the open makes it easier for you to deal with. Sometimes it's just like it can be too much. Do you find disrespect from people as far as not respecting the job, or do you just find that people speak to you like, oh, okay, that's the judge, this is how I'm supposed to treat the judge? How does that work out for you?
Well, I don't know how my other colleagues have to deal with certain issues. I know how I have to deal with certain issues. Right. For example, like I said previously, I tend to have some of my decisions appeal a little bit more than some of my white colleagues.
Okay.
I do know also that there's a certain type of decor that most judges have in their courtroom, and they receive from different litigants and even the other attorneys themselves. But I have sometimes have to check someone that's in front of me to let them know. My mother used to always say that if you have to constantly tell someone who you are, you're probably not really that person.
Right.
Nonetheless, I do have to check people at times to let them know that this is still a court. I'm still your judge. And at the end of the day, I'm going to make the final decision. So you might want to watch your tone, because I have the power to do some things that will allow you to walk out a different door than you actually came in.
Right.
So we have that conversations occasionally. Occasionally, I will have some litigants that will refer to me as bro. And I had to let someone know recently that I'm not your bro, not your brother. I know all my siblings, and last time I checked, you were not at the last Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm your judge, and I hope you respect me as a judge the way you respect someone else as a judge as well. So there is, I do believe there is some covert racism that
Right.
still occurs in courtrooms. I would prefer the overt rather than the covert because at least I know what I'm dealing with.
Right.
Otherwise, I have to kind of see where you're coming from, some of the things you're actually saying, and see what kind of codes you're actually putting in there to try and let me know that I'm still, I'm not who you want me to be, if you understand what I'm saying.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I this bruh thing is big now. It seems like they're calling everybody bruh. Girls, guys. I mean, it's amazing. As a teacher, I get it a lot too, and I'm like, yeah, the same thing you say. You know, I'm not your bruh. It's just what they say now, and it's insane. But it's what's going on, and I think we're going to be dealing with that for a little while.
Brother Watts, I would tell you this. I just perfect example. I had a case maybe a couple weeks ago. It was a domestic violence case. The petitioner gave me her side of the story. And I never read the petition before I get into court because I do not want to be biased by what I see on a piece of paper. So I give everyone the chance to tell their side of the story after I read the petition to the record. So she tells her side of the story. The other guy tells his side of the story. And I start talking and he cuts me off. And I said, I don't really know if you understand the procedure. So I'm going to say, since you're not a trained lawyer, this is how we usually do things in here. And as I'm trying to explain, he cuts me off again. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell me everything you feel like I need to know because you're being disrespectful. And I know this is an emotional court. So I'm going to give you a little deference because you're a little emotional right now.
Right.
But tell me your side. And he goes off. I mean, completely off. Starts calling me bro. Everything is bro. I said, sir, I'm going to cut you off. Not your bro. And I went in and told him who I was again. And he just kept going. And so I finally let it in. And I told him what my decision was going to be. It was a decision not in his favor. Goes completely off. Calls me everything but a child of God. Calls me everything but a judge. And I said, okay, one more word. I'm going to hold you in contempt of court.
All right.
He says two more words. One starting with mother.
Whoa!
So I don't know if mother and the last part of it would be considered one or two words, but still another word. So I hold him in contempt of court, hold it, say, you get 30 days. You give me 30 days? Yes, you're getting 30 days.
Why are you in shock now?
Yeah. He said, Judge, I'm sorry. I said, sir, at first I wasn't a judge. I was bro, and now I was a mother. Anyway, but you have to, sometimes that stuff comes up in court, and it's troubling because I feel as if I've earned a certain position because of my hard work and my skills, and fortunately, being put in a position by God to be in this position right now, where I am right now. But, like I said, we as judges of color face a little more scrutiny and face a little more backbiting, if you will, than some of our colleagues.
Well, I can imagine that. The problem I'm seeing is that it doesn't seem like the majority of the problem, and this is for everybody in authority, teachers, judges, whoever it is, it doesn't seem like the majority of the problem comes directly from people who are not people of color. Now it's the familiarity. Everybody wants to be, oh, well, we're family, oh, we're black, or we're people of color, and they want to use that familiarity in whatever place they're in. It's not appropriate everywhere. It's usually only appropriate if I'm at the barbershop or we're in the store or something like that. But in certain cases like this, it seems as if we've been taught to expect some type of hookup or some type of leniency because of our color. Where does that come from?
To be honest with you, I'm really not sure. I tell people all the time, I'm just like you, Brian. If we are out in the community, call me D Webb. I don't care. Right. I'm just an average guy like anybody else. But when you get in the courtroom, there's a certain decorum, there's a certain professionalism that goes along with being in that position. So treat me the same way you would treat someone else in that position, no matter what I look like, because I'm going to treat you the same way I would treat anyone else, no matter what your color or your skin tone is. So you're I can't give someone the hookup because at the end of the day, I got to follow the law.
Right,
So,
right.
so don't look at me as that guy just because you may look like me. I'm going to do certain things. Now, let me tell you this. As a man of color, I also understand that traditionally and historically in the past, we have not been treated fairly. So
Right.
I would do everything I can, especially since I'm a family court judge, I would do everything I can to listen to a dad that looks like me that wants to have more contact with his kids.
Right.
Because in the past, people tended to believe that men could not take care of their kids. In Kentucky, we have a law that's been passed that basically says equal parenting rights for both kids, for both parents.
Okay.
And it's a rebuttable presumption from the other side to tell the respondent, who's usually a man, why he or she should not be able to have equal time with his or her child. So I look at that and I take that to heart, and also know that, I've been in positions where I've actually been able to give that father more time with his kid simply because he needs to have time with his kids. So so it's a great position to be in, but sometimes we don't do ourselves favors when we try to act like the guy who's on the other side of the bench is going to give me the hookup because we look alike.
Right. That's not enough. Would you say there's a difference in the arrest of white males and black males? And if so, where do you think that stems from? Because we're seeing a lot of that. I know some people think there's a big difference. Some people think there's no difference at all. Where do you stand on that?
Well, let me tell you this. As a man of color, every time I step into the courtroom, every time I step outside my house, every time I step out of my car, I carry my race with me. So I cannot go on and say, oh, everything is all equal, because it's not. I see in courtrooms, not necessarily in my courtroom, but I do see in courtrooms, and I see police arrests. I see more people that look like me being arrested, and I see more people being pulled over that look like me, and having a harder time with law enforcement. I'm not saying that it's not happening, because historically and statistically, it's proven it's happening. My job is to make sure that the people that actually come into my courtroom are going to be treated fairly and equally. How they got there is another story, but what I do see is that more people that look like me are being arrested for crimes that in some cases may have been given probation, may have been a little more lenient, may have been given a second chance. But thankfully, there are people like me in this position that can give those people second chances.
And that's what we need. I think it's not a hookup; it's understanding. I'm from New York, and I moved back to New York in December of 2016 for a little while. But when I first got there, I got pulled over maybe 20 times in the first 6 months, if that. Had never had problems with the law in my life. I don't have a record. Wasn't doing anything wrong, and never got a ticket for any of those times I got pulled over. Just got pulled over just in 2017, just for whatever. It was always a mistake. It was never anything that came out of it. Sometimes they were even lying, like, "Oh, your taillight is busted." I was like, "No, it's not." Okay, and I mean, it was crazy, but it was during that time when it seemed like that was happening a lot. And each time I felt like, okay, this might be the time where I'm the new guy on the news story, But I have to say one thing about your state is specific. Your city. I was in Kentucky, and I was with a friend of mine, and his car. I think his wife had used the car before him, and she didn't put any gas in it. We ran out of gas. And so we're walking to the gas station on the highway near the Yum Center. So I mean, we're on the highway for real. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not
Exactly.
So we're walking. What he doesn't tell me, and I've known this guy since college, is that he has a gun on him. Right? He's carrying. And it's concealed carry. It's legal and everything, but he just didn't tell me. So we're walking, and a police car pulls up to us, and so I'm like, being a Northerner, I'm like, okay, I'm in the South. This is it. This is how it goes down. it's over for me. I mean, we're done. And the cop gets out and he talks to us. He asks us where we're going, and we say we're going to the gas station, ran out of gas. And he's looking at us for a little while. Then he says, "Okay, I'm going to take you to the gas station." And I was like, "Okay, I'm a little concerned now." So my friend says, "Well, first, let me tell you that I have a gun and all of this stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, here, it's about to be over. I'm about to be in this water or something. Something's going down." And I'm mad because I'm hearing the story the first time too. Like, you have a gun? So the cop says, "Okay." He checks everything out with him. We get in the car, takes us to the gas station, drives us back to our car, makes sure we're good, and he leaves. And I felt compelled that night and the next day to post about how great this cop was, because you don't hear stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
All you see is the bad ones, and the bad ones are bad. They deserve to be publicized. But I was like, man, I'm in this position where they have me so scared now that every time something happens, I'm thinking, this is it. This is going to be a problem. And
Right.
I think that has put a lot of our brothers and sisters at risk, because then they start to do things that they would not have done otherwise. You're nervous now. You're going to act different. You're going to respond differently. So it's a lot to me that seems to be going into this, and it's creating this atmosphere where you don't want to deal with the cops. When I grew up even in the South Bronx, cops were, they taught us in school, the police are your friends. And we spoke to them. They came by the school. They did whatever. We saw them in the neighborhood. We said hello, even though we saw them arresting people and into other things. But now it seems like there's such a divide. What is the solution for us to go back to this community involvement where we have protection and stuff instead of just people who we feel that are after us?
Let me touch on one of the things that you were just talking about. I am a judge. Before I was a judge, I was a practicing attorney, had a lot of cases in front of people. I am a former athlete, so people knew me from the city as well. And even to this day, I still feel nervous anytime I'm driving down the highway legally and I have a police car roll up behind me.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's just instinctive. I don't know if it's something that my parents taught me growing up, because everybody had that talk, if you understand, about what to do when the police comes up behind you. I know that I've been in situations where, fortunately, I've had an opportunity to live in some better communities. I remember moving into a community that was pretty exclusive. Drive up to my house, and I get someone, a police car, roll up behind me before I even get into my garage, asking me to get out of the car because I fit the description.
Right.
And it's my car, it's my house, and I have to verify who I am and where I live and what I'm driving,
Right.
based upon circumstances. So your observation and some of the things you're talking about are very valid, because it's not just specific to people who are doing wrong. It's still an issue for people who are doing right, but have to suffer some of the same circumstances because we've seen it on TV. So the question is, how do we get back to that? I think that one of the things that we need to do is we need to try to need to get to the point where we have to acknowledge that there are some good police officers out there. And I would say this on record: the majority of the police officers that are out there are good. I have a son, 24, about to turn 25 this year, that will be going into the police academy in April or May of this year, because he wants to go into law enforcement, because he wants to be an example to people of what good policing could be.
Right.
So I think as long as we start having people to understand and acknowledge that there are good police officers out there, that's the beginning. We also need to have the police acknowledge that there are some police officers who aren't so good.
Right.
The brass is not as shiny for everyone as
Right.
it is across the board. So I think that if we can get a mutual understanding that there are some good and some bad from both sides, from people in the minority community and police officers, I think that's the first step at healing. I will acknowledge also that whenever I go out the house and whenever a police officer goes out the house, their first goal is to come home.
Right.
That's their first goal. So I know that when you have good police officers out there doing their job, they try to do things to make sure that they ensure that they get home. And I'm going to assume that people out there doing right are trying to do the same thing. So as long as we have the understanding that we are all trying to get home and that we need to acknowledge that there are some good things and some bad things, I think that's the first step of healing and getting back to where we used to be or where we should be. Because
Right.
I'll say this, it's never been the way we want it to be.
Right. That's true. That's true. I mean, what I've noticed is that what I thought was good was just because I was young. I didn't see everything. So what I thought was great, it wasn't great. It was just the status quo. And we definitely need to get to a different place than that. So many of us in our community are fed up with the lack of fair rulings in cases that have taken place in the last maybe 10 to 20 years. And one thing that I always hear people say is, Brian, the system works, trust the system. What does that mean to you? And do you have that same philosophy being in the position that you're in?
Let me just say this. I think that the system works best in this country as compared to other countries. I've had an opportunity to see how the system works in other countries, and it's not as good as it is here. So while this may be a very flawed system, and I will acknowledge that it's a very flawed system, it's probably the best legal system that in the world. I will say that. But as a judge, I also know that you can only do what you do.
Right.
You make decisions. Now, let me clarify something. I'm a family court judge.
Right.
In Kentucky, there are 3 different types of judges. There are at the state level. There are district court judges. There are circuit court judges, and circuit court judges are divided into 2 sections: general circuit and family court.
Okay.
General circuit handles all of the civil cases that go to the state level, and also like for example, if there was a let's say a civil case, a good civil case would be someone takes thousands of embezzlement. That would be a civil case.
Okay.
But also you have cases where, I guess that could be a criminal case as well, but you also have the criminal cases. But all those cases, general circuit and district court cases, they have juries. Okay. Family court cases, we do not have juries.
Really?
So if there is a case where I have to make a decision, well, actually every case that comes in my courtroom, I have to make the decision, big or small, no matter what it is. At least in those other 2 systems, you have a jury that can help a judge make a decision. So a lot of times, a jury, you have to make sure that the jury is a makeup of the community. Make sure that there's representation of who the person could possibly be on trial for. And so that when they go to court, they can have someone that kind of looks like them and possibly, hopefully thinks like them as well to help make a decision. So your question is a great question, but it all depends on the jury makeup a lot of times, because at the end of the day, a judge kind of follows, especially like in, let's say, a murder case.
Right.
Judge follows the recommendation of the jury and bases his sentence off of the verdict of the jury. So I think a lot of times people have the misperception that a judge does X, Y, and Z. Now, a judge can listen to some of the motions that are made and make a ruling on those motions, whether this bit of evidence gets in or whether it doesn't. He can make a ruling on objections, whether something that someone says needs to be stricken from the record. But at the end of the day, when someone makes a rule, when someone has a jury trial or murder trial or something like that, whatever the verdict is of the jurors is what a judge usually follows. Now, there are very rare occasions when a judge does not follow that decision, but a judge will follow that ruling, and then after that, a lot of times he will help make the sentence on how much a person has to serve.
So your judge is basically like a referee in a football game,
Yeah. I tell people all the time, my job is to call balls and strikes.
Right.
That's my job. And I hope that when I'm doing that, I'm doing it fairly, and I have to do it based upon the law. But my job is to call balls and strikes no matter what the situation is.
Okay, so just so viewers can understand, is there any crossover anytime? Is there any time that you would be involved in cases that aren't family cases, cases that do have juries? Is there any sort of crossover between the different types of judges in your state?
Um, I would tell you this. As far as a family court judge is concerned, no. I just deal strictly with family court matters. There are cases in district court, also
Right,
cases in general circuit court, where a person may ask for a bench trial. Bench trial is basically when a judge makes a decision and not the jurors. It doesn't happen a whole lot because a lot of times a person may want to be judged by a jury of his or her peers,
right.
but for the most part, that's what you get, and it's very rare that attorney would ask for a bench trial in cases that are more high profile cases or bigger cases in as far as what a sentence could be.
Now, I've actually had to appear in family court, not as the plaintiff or anything, but because I was a principal of a school,
Mhm.
Nashville, and I had to appear in family court. And you're right; it's definitely an intense situation. Sometimes, I'm just sitting here realizing there was no jury because I didn't even realize that because I didn't want to be there. I was, I wanted to do what I had to do and get out of. I mean, just being in court just was a lot for me. I was like, I wanted to come in and watch some things, but I didn't want to be on the stand and doing all of that and being questioned. So it was a lot, and it was very odd for me. But yeah, I'm thinking back and I'm like, yeah, you're right. There's no jury in there. So tell me this: well, not how, but is there any aspiration to be a different type of judge, or do family court judges ever get to move up and become maybe like Supreme Court justices or anything like that? What is the trail from where you are to something like that?
Well, let me tell you this: my trail has ended because I'm right where I want to be. When I was growing up, if you are any type of person that wants to go in law, you look like me, and you have heroes. My hero was Thurgood Marshall,
Yeah.
so I wanted to be the next great Supreme Court justice because of Thurgood Marshall. As I began to matriculate and get into law school, I saw a different path for me. And I knew that, especially once I got on the family court bench, I knew that I had a direct way of affecting people based upon the decisions that I write and some of the things that I say. So I like to tell people that I'm in charge of 70,000 families in Kentucky, just in Jefferson County. And I have a direct say on what happens to certain members of that family. And it comes with a heavy burden, to be honest with you, because I know that the decisions I make are going to affect families not only just tomorrow, but it could affect families for generations to come based upon the decisions that I make. So I know where I am, and I know where I want to be, and I'm exactly. I think God has perfectly situated me for the position I'm in right now.
Okay.
There are other judges that want to do something different. So I do know, for example, I have a great friend named Judge Denise Clayton. Judge Clayton started off as a district court judge. She worked as a general circuit court judge. She was also a family court judge, and as a circuit court judge. And now she's in the Court of Appeals. So there are avenues to take if you want to. Also in Kentucky, you don't actually have to be a judge to be a Supreme Court justice, because I know right now there's an election. We're in the election cycle right now. Thankfully, the election filing deadline has closed. I'm running unopposed, so I just have to write my name down or check my name off in November, and I'll be elected again because all I need is one vote because nobody else is running against me. But there is a very qualified person that is running for Supreme Court justice, and she's running against a person that has actually never been on the bench before because
Wow.
there's no requirement that you have to be a judge before you can be a Supreme Court justice. So there are many avenues to get to the highest. I don't know how that's going to work out for that particular individual, but Historically, in the past, Supreme Court justices have been judges in lower courts.
Okay, okay. So to sort of switch avenues, you're a dad.
Yes.
You have children who are no longer children, really. They're grown. You've poured into them. I'm sure, being the person you are, the things you've been through, the athleticism, the obviously the studying and graduating and all of that stuff. How do you tie in what you do now with your education to them about being African American in the world that we have today? There are so many things that are different from when we grew up, and I know we grew up in different areas, but it seems like there's some things that were the same for us. That we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have social media, so we didn't have the constant barrage of news and events and opinions from everybody who wanted to talk. Um, there are a lot of things that we didn't find out until maybe we got home and watched the news in the evening with our parents. There's a lot of things, even if we think about it now, there are a lot of people that might have gotten hurt or been in situations that we never heard about just because, the news wasn't the way it is now. And in the last maybe 7 or 8 years, it seems like the racism or the just the way people feel, the prejudice has become in style to be able to say, to spout your feelings about how you feel about different groups of people. What is it that you instill in your children and hope that they keep in their minds as a Webb right now, going forward?
It's interesting you say that. My father passed away about a year ago. And, I'm constantly remembering some of the things that he taught me that I've tried to pour into my kids. One of the things that he used to always tell me that I later found out came from someone else. I thought that my father says, give me all this knowledge. I actually heard it from someone else.
That's right.
But he used to always say that everything that is right is not popular. And everything that is popular is not right.
That's right.
Choose to be right instead of being popular. So I think about that when I think about some of the things I see my kids talk about through social media.
Right.
Just because something is trending doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Right.
Just because something is out there doesn't mean that you have to go along with it because it's out there. Another thing that he used to always talk about is stand up for yourself. Not just don't be a follower, be your own man, or in my daughter's case, be your own woman.
Right.
Do not have to feel like you have to be in a group in order to be important. Don't feel like you have to be in a group in order to go along with something. Have your own set of principles. Understand who you are and why you're doing something, and stand up for it. And those are some of the things that I was taught. Those are some of the things that I try and teach my kids all the time. We have discussions a lot, especially my boys. My boys and I are very close, and we have discussions about what's going on because they have this 24-hour news cycle. They're involved with social media, but also they have to understand that some of the things that they say and some of the things that they do don't necessarily just affect them.
Right.
It affects their parents too. Because, for example, I remember my son put something out there and someone came to me and said, did your son say this? Showed it to me on social media. I had to pull by his coattails like, hey, dude, you don't just speak for you anymore. You speak for all of us. So I understand that. And I said, I'm going to support what you do, but you have to understand that some of your actions have consequences too. So if you're going to say something, be able to stand up for it, be able to say why you're saying it, and stand on it. I'm never going to limit what you say, but if you say something, understand why you're saying it. Just don't say something just to be saying something. So we talk about those things, and it's odd that now that I have grown kids now, how some of the things that my parents used to talk to me about, I'm kind of saying the same thing to them in the 21st century way of doing it, if you understand what I mean.
Well, I mean, I don't have kids, and I still find myself doing that. So it's crazy to hear your parents' words come out of your mouth, and it's like, wait a minute, I remember
they were pretty smart.
Yeah, yeah, I remember something. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, this is my last question for you. As a judge, what do you want to see improve with our young brothers that are out there, maybe the ones that come into family court? What are some of the things, or even the ones that go into other courtrooms that aren't your courtrooms? What are some of the things that you want to see improve? Like if we said the top 3 things that you could put out there for young African American or men of colors to get right so that they can stop being pushed into these courtrooms and having to be dealt with, what would those things be?
That's a great question. I think the first thing I would say that, um, let me say this. If you're coming into the courtroom, one or two things have happened. You have either been uh, caught, or you've been, um, or someone has accused you of something that you didn't do.
Right.
So I am very cognizant of the fact that sometimes people may be in the courtroom not from something that they did, but from something that someone else says that they did. So I have two things based upon that. One, the first thing I would do, one thing I would tell, I'll put it like this: I would tell my 15-year-old self, one, don't put yourself into a position where you have to defend something that's going on.
Right.
So that's the first thing I would do. For example, if you are in a position where you may not uh, have stolen a car, but you're with your boys riding in a stolen car,
Right.
don't put yourself in a position where you have to defend what's going on, the actions.
Okay.
Second thing is, if you are actually in the criminal justice system, just be accountable. Accept the response. If you are going to be big enough to do something that could put you in that position, be big enough to accept the punishment that could possibly go along with it. So those two things. Lastly, I do a lot of public speaking, especially with kids that are in middle school and high school. I try to convey to them that your actions do have consequences. So before you do something, understand what could potentially happen if you get caught doing something. I also talk about my particular job as a family court judge, and say that I see people that look like me get hemmed up all the time,
Right.
based upon actions. And they say, what do you mean? I said, every day when I go to work, I have to go through the file room. File room is about, let's say about 10,000 square feet,
Okay.
full of files of people that used to be happy at one time. So they used to be happy. Now they are no longer happy. Now they're coming to see people like me to try and straighten out their situation. So um, I let them know that if you're going to be involved with a relationship with someone, understand that, one, you have to treat that person with dignity and respect, and two, your actions may cause you to come to court for, whether it's paternity,
Right.
whether it's a domestic violence situation because you couldn't get your stuff together and you got upset about it, or three, let's say that all those things worked out at first, but then you want to say, I can't do this with him anymore. I can't do this with him anymore. I'm good. I got to separate myself. So also understand that you have to make sure that the person that you're dealing with is someone that you may have to deal with for a long time, and judge and choose accordingly.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I talk about those different things. I don't know if those are my top three, but those are three definite things that I would say: be accountable, watch who you're with, and make sure that you don't put yourself in a position that could cause you to have to explain something.
Right.
And lastly, making sure that you know who you're dealing with going forward.
Well, that's great. That's great advice. I definitely thank you. I'm sure our viewers will take all of that advice to heart. Thank you so much for coming out today, Judge. Definitely want to make sure that I get back to you at some point in the future. We don't want to just have people on for one time and then leave them alone. So definitely want to create that relationship with you and the show come together. So thank you so much for coming out, and we'll definitely get back in touch with you soon.
Brother Watson, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be on the show, because I followed you a little bit. You're a good brother, man. So I appreciate you bringing me on here, but I just want to acknowledge who you are and what you're doing for the community. and all the service that you're providing, because we need to hear more stories like mine, more stories like people that you are showcasing, because we need to see positive things coming out of our community. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's definitely the goal. Take it easy, and we'll see you soon.
Take care now.